What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from TheTokenMinorities, and I'm here with Season 5, Week 3 of the Pokemon Premier League Division 1, this week against Jack the Donphanatic and his Norwich Skitty. Now, before we go any further, make sure to check out last week's battle if you haven't already done so. We played in a very, very close game against Electric Storm and his Melbourne Victory Star. Came down to the very wire. Go take a look at that if you haven't already. It is the video before this in the PPL playlist that this video should now be a part of. Now, again, before we go any further, make sure to check out my new opponent's channel, the Donphanatic, will be in the description below, along with all of the other coaches' channels from the PPL Division 1 and Division 2, as well as some other links to Pokemon Premier League content and just ways to get involved with the community, with the league community. So make sure to take a look at that. Now let's dive into this matchup a little bit, as it's a tough one. It's definitely a tough one this week, as my opponent Jack has Necrozma, Kartana, Infernape, which is Z-eligible, Togekiss, Goodra, Gastrodon, Electivire, which is Z-eligible. The Goodra is Z-eligible as well, if I didn't already mention that, and then a Mega Beedrill and a Steelix, with the Electivire being able to use status and support Z moves as well. So his team is pretty threatening offensively for sure, especially considering the fact that his two hardest offensive hitters on his team, Kartana and Mega Beedrill, have dual stab that are super effective against my Clefable Mega Slowbro core. So that sucks. Not to mention that both of those options also have a super effective coverage move for the Steel member, Registeel, in my core, being Sacred Sword for the Kartana and not Drill Run, I think it's Drill Run? Pretty sure it's Drill Run for the Mega Beedrill as well. So yeah, those two huge threats for me to deal with defensively, and the biggest issue about especially Beedrill is that it outpaces my offensive members very easily as well, and is quite frankly able to OHKO most members of my team. So Mega Beedrill is a huge problem for me to deal with. The only things I really have on my team to deal with it are something like a Registeel, perhaps with a Shuka Berry, and maybe an Intimidate Hitmontop. Issue being with the Hitmontop especially is that if he just U-turns on the Hitmontop, he gets to go straight into Togekiss, for which I have literally no switch-ins on my entire team. So yeah, it's definitely a very tough matchup if I were to run more of a balanced build, because if you look at my offensive members, most notably Diggersby and Thundurus, I'll start with Thundurus since this one's a little bit more obvious, he actually has Thundurus very well checked with the combination of Goodra, Gastrodon, and Electivire, and even Steelix to an extent, but because of the fact that he has Gastrodon and Goodra, it is very, very hard for Thundurus to be able to have any chance to sweep. Coupling with that, Thundurus is pretty much unarguably my best switch into the Togekiss, and Thundurus is not exactly the best at doing so either, because he can easily run something like Ancient Power, which is totally possible considering I also have a Talonflame on my roster. So Thundurus is not really great defensively against him, and it's not great offensively against him either. There's a good chance I probably won't even bring it this week. On top of that, the Diggersby. Now, this is the one that's a little bit strange, because if you look through his roster, he only has one ground resist, and that is a Togekiss, which takes 1,000,000 from return, so I could theoretically just run something like Life Orb and dual stab with Return and Earthquake and do a bunch of damage to his team. True. However, if you look at the speed tiers, Diggersby's speed tier is below base 80, I believe it's like 77 or 78. Almost his entire roster is capable of outspeeding that, including the Goodra, including the Togekiss. Those are the two most notable ones, and then Necrozma as well. All those can outspeed Diggersby, so if he wants to, he can easily just bring an entire team that outspeeds Diggersby, making Diggersby useless. That's one thing. And in addition to that, his defensive threats are seldom OHKO'd by it as well, so it's not like I can necessarily force something out either, as the Necrozma can take any one hit, not well, but it can run something like a Rocky Helmet, and coupling the Rocky Helmet damage with the Life Orb means Diggersby will only get about 3 hits total versus his team, and in a 1v1 scenario he can easily just Moonlight up in my face and essentially wear me down, so I can't really break Necrozma with that theoretically, and really the same applies for the Togekiss with the Rocky Helmet, as that too will be able to wear me down. So Diggersby is decent at best in this matchup, despite the fact that he really doesn't have the best switch-ins. The main reason, the main incentive to really bring Diggersby this week would be for the priority quick attack to help deal with the Beedrill, but then again, there's a decent chance that by going for that option, he could just hard switch in something like his Kartana and immediately threaten me further. So Diggersby is very hit or miss depending on what he actually brings, and for that reason, I'm not actually 100% convinced that it is the best mon to bring in this matchup. Now, if I were to try to play this a little bit more offensively, or a little bit more of a balanced play style. The issue returns to the fact that I don't have switches to Togekiss, I have minimal switch-ins to Mega Beedrill, and I really only have one switch into Kartana, being the Talonflame. So I am very, very heavily pressured defensively if I were to take a more balanced approach, in that I would have to play perfectly and have a good matchup at Team Preview if I'm going to be able to win. With that said, I think it is nearly impossible to guarantee perfect prep in building a balanced team for this matchup. I also think it's impossible to guarantee perfect prep with an offensive team for this matchup because of how his speed tiers work and because of how his offensive threats are just so strong against my team in general and against my most obvious wall core. Now, with all that said, that was a big preface. I know I went into a lot of detail on that, and there's a reason why. So this game, we're running semi-stall, okay? And I'm sorry if you disagree with that, or if you don't like to see that. I'm sorry. It was by far the best playstyle, the best way to prep for his team, because I need multiple defensive checks to his offensive mons, and the only way to accomplish that with my draft, given the fact that his offensive core is so good against my standard defensive mons, being the Clefable, Mega Bro, Registeel, is to have multiple walls upon walls with a lot of nasty stuff going on in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and hop on over to the team itself, and as you can see, starting off with a Talonflame. Now this set doesn't look too semi-stallish, but then you look at the EV spread, and you see that it's primarily bulky and defensive with a Rocky Helmet and Flame Body, so this is pretty obviously my switch into Kartana here, as well as being a general win condition against this team. Speed investment does allow me to outpace Max Speed Infernape and Max Speed Kartana, as those both reach the same speed stat, and then after a bulk up, the combination of Flare Blitz and Brave Bird does do a ton to his team. So this is one of my offensive win conditions this game, despite the fact that it also serves a very important defensive role, as well as Kartana should really have no way of breaking this, especially if Stealth Rocks are not on the field. Then again, if Stealth Rocks are on the field, that puts pressure on my hazard removers to be able to take care of that, but we'll make sure that stays the case with hazards off the field, as this is a very important member both offensively and defensively this week. Not a whole lot else to say. It is the Kartana switch in, and hopefully we'll be able to put in some offensive damage late game. Now, my other offensive mon on this team, and there are only two, is the Mega Slowbro. And again, it's EV defensively, but it is also Trick Room Calm Mind, so this also serves as a nice late game win condition as well, depending on what mons he allows me to weaken. I do think that either Talonflame or Mega Slowbro should be able to sweep late game, and if not either of those, then that probably means my defensive core is still pretty heavily intact and is able to hopefully wear him down slowly but surely. But this should be able to do the trick late game, as he does not have any immunities to Psychic. He only has a few resistances to it, the most notable one being the Necrozma, so I do need to get the Necrozma Toxic or severely weakened, or just ensure that it doesn't have recovery if I want the Mega Slowbro to be able to beat that. But overall, very, very solid against this team, and if I can turn the speed tier table on him a little bit with the Trick Room, when he only has things like the Mega Beedrill and Kartana left, for example, this can definitely win the game in the late game. So that's the offensive core, quote-unquote, for this game. Now let's turn to some of the disgusting cancer. Next up, with the Audino making his debut for the Toronto Staraptors, and this set is pretty cool, as it's a simple Wish, Protect, Flamethrower, Toxic set. Cool. So basically what this does is it toxics everything, and it flamethrowers his most likely offensive switch-ins, being the Beedrill and the Kartana. So this is essentially designed to be a perfect partner. This is especially defensive, by the way, as you can tell. Perfect partner with my Clefable, which is unaware, also Wish Protect with Moonblast and Heal Bell. So this combination, this core, the double Wish core, shout out to Zazo, is going to keep my team afloat for the entire game. That's the idea. Double Wish is very easy to pass into my other 4 mons on my team, just due to the defensive synergy of normal Fairy, as those two are able to switch into any single Pokemon on his team without too much trouble, and also just gives me a way to bail myself out essentially against the Togekiss that I struggled so hard against, as I was forced to bring Hitmontop to have usable hazard removal. I really didn't like the Decidueye's matchup as a remover in this game, so I did decide that Hitmontop was the best choice. Therefore, I need a perfect switch into the Togekiss, and this core does serve as that perfect switch in. Now, that will become a little dicey if he is a Nasty Plot variant, but I don't really expect to see Nasty Plot Togekiss, because if he did bring that, then he would either not have Roost, or he would lack one of the coverage moves needed to beat some combination of my team, Registeel, and the Thundurus. So I think he's going to either bring an offensive set with no Nasty Plot and having Roost, with Ancient Power, Fire Blast / Flamethrower, and Air Slash, or he's going to bring more of a support set with Air Slash, Roost, Defog, and Filler of some sort, maybe even T-Wave if he wants to be that guy. There's a lot of different options he can do with that last slot. So I do think the combination of Clefable and Aldino will be able to keep me afoot in this game. If he brings some sort of perfect wall breaker, then good on him, he beat me. But I really think this will be very hard for him to break through without hacks. Next up is the Registeel. I guess I can go into the EV spread on this a little bit. So this essentially just ensures that it can't be OHKO'd by any Infernape that's not choice banded. It also ensures that it can't be 2-hit KO'd by any Necrozma set unless he has some sort of boost. And essentially just ensures that most things on his team are not able to 2-hit KO me. So not going to go into more detail on that because there was a lot of thought that went into these calcs, but that's basically what this is. It's a defensive monster, very hard for him to deal with, and it should keep my team afloat along with the Audino. Now next up is the Registeel. This is a fully Fizdef variant with Stealth Rock. The most notable reason for bringing it here, and the reasoning behind the spread, is to help check an SD Beedrill, as SD Beedrill is a very big threat to my team. And having the Shukaberry ensures that I can always check that thing, and through the combination of the double Rocky Helmet that you'll see here, the Hitmontop also has Rocky Helmet, and the Talonflame having the Rocky Helmet, plus this, I should be able to wear down Beedrill, especially in combination with the Stealth Rock. So that's pretty important here. And then Iron Head for general coverage against this team, and Toxic to help spread the love a little bit, and Hidden Power Fire for the Kartana, as I could definitely see him thinking Kartana can come in without any real fear after seeing Stealth Rock, Iron Head, and Toxic on this. So overall pretty solid against this team, and quite honestly very essential as well. And then finally we have the Hitmontop, again just a max Fizdef variant because his physical threats are so scary to my team. Rapid Spin to help out the Talonflame, Mach Punch to help hit the Kartana as well as generally do damage to his team with Stab, Toxic to spread the love, and Bullet Punch to just help do a little more damage to both the Togekiss and the Beedrill whenever I do want to damage them with the Hitmontop. Again, this is Intimidate, so this does serve as another switch into the Beedrill to help me wear it down, and due to the Intimidate, I'll be able to take attacks from it decently well as well. So yeah, this team is cancer. I do apologize to Jack especially. I really didn't want to bring Semistall. I built like 5 or 6 other teams before this trying to make something work that wasn't this cancerous, but this was the only thing that really would work consistently. So I really do apologize, both to Jack and my viewers, but this is what we're doing this week, and we'll see how it goes. So, once again, I'm going to try to live record this battle. Due to the semi-stall nature of this team, there is a chance that the battle will be too long to upload a live comm. So what I might end up doing is just upload the post comm. Alright, and just as I kind of expected, we are going to be doing a post-comm here for this battle. The battle itself actually timed out. We didn't even finish the entire battle in the 1-hour time slot that is allotted for Wi-Fi battles, so that tells you a little bit about the nature of what this battle came down to. But just to talk a little bit about the team preview here, as my opponent, the Donphanatic, decided to bring Electivire, Kartana, Steelix, Goodra, Infernape, and Necrozma. So well, I guess 3 really big things to point out here at Team Preview. 1, there is no Mega Beedrill. I prepped way too much for Mega Beedrill considering what he actually brought. 2, there's no Togekiss. I have no idea why. But the fact that he didn't bring either of those 2 Pokemon really makes me upset that I didn't bring my balanced builds, because those were the single 2 Pokemon giving me all the trouble for my balanced builds. I was able to deal with everything else very well with my balance, except for the combination of Beedrill, U-turning on my incoming Registeel / Hitmontop into a Togekiss, and threatening my entire team because I have no switch-ins. He didn't bring either of them, which baffles me. I'll be very interested in seeing his thought process as to why not to bring those 2 Pokemon, as I thought they were no-brainers, a given. They were going to destroy me if I didn't bring something stupid fat like I did here, but he didn't bring either of them. And now on top of this, he also brought the Steelix, which admittedly I under-prepped for a little bit because I felt it was the least likely mon to come on his entire roster, as everything else in my opinion had much better matchups than Steelix did. That said, Steelix matches up very well against the Pokemon and the sets that I actually decided to bring here. So, you know, I guess good on my opponent for bringing that, but that's going to make this a very long and a very hard battle, because Steelix is of course a steel type and it cannot be toxic, and the majority of my offense on this team comes from being able to, quote-unquote offense, comes from being able to toxic my opponent's Pokemon. Everything else on his team except the Kartana, but I don't need to toxic that because of Rocky Helmets and because of just having the 2 pretty good switch-ins to that being both the Hitmontop and most notably the Talonflame. But wearing down the Steelix is very, very, very hard for me to do. I essentially have to hope that he's not leftovers, because if he isn't leftovers, then I should be able to wear him down with a combination of just chip damage from my team. But if he is leftovers, then it's going to be a pain. It's going to be a pain. So what I'm going to do here for this battle is I'm actually going to go ahead and start it, and it's going to be played on a very fast speed, as the total turn number is 80, and I have no intention of commentating all 80 turns in explicit detail, so I'm going to go ahead and get it going here soon, and I'm just going to point out the key points in the game. There may be some areas where I'm not talking too much, and that's because there is a lot of stally, wish, protect, toxic, stuff like that. I don't need to commentate that. You know exactly how that works. I know you guys probably don't want to see it as much as I want to see it again myself. So that's basically how this is going to go down. Sorry, it's a little bit of a different format of a video than what you might be used to seeing on this channel, but or at least from me on this channel. But I feel like that's necessary, as I don't typically want to upload games where I play semi-stall or anything close to it, and it is a requirement for the league, obviously. So we're going to go ahead and kick this off, and then we'll dive into this. Alright, and as you can see, my opponent Jack is issuing the challenge, and I do lead off with my Clefable, as I felt that it gave me the best overall lead matchup against all of his possible rockers, being the Necrozma, the Infernape, or maybe even the Steelix. Obviously not a good matchup against the Steelix, but I really didn't expect the Steelix lead necessarily, as it's more likely he will want to maybe try to gain momentum with the Electivire, or maybe try to use Necrozma as the rocker. I really did think Necrozma was a better rocker against my team, just because of how much it pressures all of my potential rockers, my potential spin blockers, that is, or hazard removals is what I'm going for. Most notably the Hitmontop, which, as you can see here, that was my hazard remover on this team. But he does lead off with the Electivire, and it's going to turn into a sequence of pivots around my walls just to kind of scout him out. I'm trying to see if the Electivire can touch the Clefable. That's essentially the game plan here with these first few turns, is just to see if my Clefable is able to actually wall this Electivire, as it does indeed have access to things like Iron Tail, most notably, and with this being a Z eligible mon, that is definitely a potential bring he could have here in this matchup, especially because if I were to bring a berry, it is much more likely to be Kevia Berry for the Mega Beedrill. So I did think Z Iron Tail made a lot of sense, so I was just trying to scout that out here with these turns. He's not going for a Steel move at any point, so I do think he probably doesn't have a Z move at all. I think he's probably just an Expert Belt variant, which also makes a fair amount of sense to try to deal with my Mega Slowbro at maybe a +1. I believe it's probably still 2 KO'd by Expert Belt boosted Thunderbolt. So cool prep on his part there, as he is going to Volt Switch out here into his Necrozma, getting a little bit tired of this game, and I'm again going to just set up the Wish with, you know, that's just kind of my game plan here early on, as now I'm going to switch out into my Registeel, as this is essentially free Stealth Rocks, and I did kind of expect him to either go for his own rocks or go for a Toxic, so overall it was a pretty safe play, as I'm going to go for my rocks now as he goes into his Steelix. Now here's the thing I have no switch-ins to, so I'm going to be switching straight into my Hitmontop, just because I don't really know what I can really do. I mean, I could switch an Audino, I guess, but all I can really do to him is Flamethrower and just get Toxic myself, and I believe I actually have a little bit of damage on my Audino at this point, so I could even be 2-hit KO'd by Heavy Slam if he is offensively invested. So that was kind of the thought on this, as he does just fire off a Toxic on my incoming Hitmontop, so that's kind of unfortunate, but I do still have the Heal Bell on my Clefable in the back to take care of that if need be. Here I am forced to reveal my Shook Berry, as it goes for Earthquake with this thing, and it does pitiful damage, so that reveals that he's basically more of a defensive Necrozma, which does make sense for the Diggersby, as that would be able to wall me out if I'm not a Life Orb Diggersby. So cool prep on his part there. That would be how he planned to deal with Diggersby. If I did bring Diggersby, it definitely was going to be Agility with Life Orb, but unfortunately that is not the route we decided to take, and the Necrozma is essentially just a nuisance for my team to slowly wear down with toxic damage, which is pretty much my strategy for most of his team here. This stage in the game. So here he's going to switch out into his Goodra, and this is when things become a little bit unfortunate. Okay, not hacks-wise, not hacks at all. This is just his prep directly countering the team style that I brought here this week, as he is sub-leftovers Goodra. What that means is that I am left with a choice. Do I PP stall? Do I PP stall knowing that he cannot in any way take out the combination of Clefable Audino? Do I essentially sacrifice my Clefable to weaken the Goodra, knowing that it takes 3 Sludge Waves for him to knock out my Clefable, and I can do a chunk of damage to this with Moonblast because he does not have the Assault Vest? That's an option. Or do I just kind of frolic around a little bit, trying to wait for an opening to do something, and recovering, and then attacking, recovering, attacking, and basically just waiting for him to get a poison on me with Sludge Waves. So, like, it's kind of... This set really screwed me over in this game, I think, and that's totally credit to my opponent. I'm not salty at all. That is great prep on my opponent's part here. But yeah, it pretty much screwed over the entire semi-stall strategy here, because the only thing on my team that really can damage a Gudra with leftovers and substitute is this Clefable, and I'm essentially still pressured to recover a lot with this thing, and as you can see, the Moonblast is doing nearly half to the Gudra, so that means I theoretically can weaken down a lot. Issue being, it's very hard for me to finish him off, but in hindsight, what I think I should have done in this situation here is to just go for the series of Moonblast to get this thing weakened, leaving it at about 30% or so. Then I could have gone into my Talonflame directly after, and maybe been able to punch a huge hole in his team, as he did not have Stealth Rocks up at this point in the match, and I think that just would have overall been a smart play on my part to do potentially. Issue being, the Talonflame is so important for the Kartana that I didn't really want to risk it, essentially, as he still could just go into Steelix, still easily chew a +1 Flare Blitz, and then take me out with the Stone Edge, and that's just not worth it at all. So, you know, hindsight is 20/20, obviously, but knowing now that he actually doesn't even have Stone Edge on this Steelix, the moveset was actually Stealth Rock, Toxic, Heavy Slam, and Earthquake, my Talonflame could have just come in, set up two bulk ups, and probably just won the game instantly. So that kind of sucks that I didn't just go for it there, as that would have been just a clean win right away. So he really didn't bring much at all for bulk up Talonflame. But of course, hindsight is 20/20. Can't replay that now. But here I'm going to go into my Slowbro, thinking that okay, I'm a Mega Slowbro. If I have any offensive investment at all, I OHKO a Steelix, a max HP Steelix with Scald, and he just stays in. So I didn't even need offensive investment given the health that he's at. I know I did need a little offensive investment to guarantee the kill with Skull, but he just stays in to Toxic me, which, I mean, like, it worked out for him, but I don't know if I agree with that play, as I was hoping he would go into his Gudra instead of just staying in and going for the Toxic, because getting the damage on the Gudra is really important, and with my Mega Slowbro still being pretty healthy, I just could theoretically wear down the Gudra and put myself in a pretty good position. So unfortunately he does decide to stay in though and Toxic me, and we're back in this position again with the stupid Gudra, and I can't do anything. So this is, I guess, part of the reason why I'm doing the commentary in this style instead of, you know, going exactly play by play, is because we have this sequence that eats up so much of the game time, and it's mindless for both of us. We're literally just I'm trying to break his sub, as he is just slowly recovering with leftovers to the point where he'll be able to sub again later on, and there's nothing I can do about it. So really, this is just a mess at this point. He brought the perfect counter team to the semi-stall that I brought here in this matchup. So semi-stall, not working out, probably won't do it again, but we're still going to try to pull off a win here if possible. The score is still 6-6. It's still anybody's game, but breaking through this combination of the sub leftovers Gudra as well as the leftovers Steelix is not something my team is really designed to do. And while that might be a small oversight on my part, I still, in hindsight, even so, think that this team option was the best option to bring because of how insanely improbable, I guess is the word, that I would have been able to win the game with a balanced build. Of course, given what he actually brought, my balanced build would have been fine. There's no Beedrill, there's no Togekiss, I would have been fine. But looking at the team matchup and logically thinking through it, I really thought he was going to bring Mega Beedrill, really thought he was going to bring Togekiss, and you know, that's just not what he does. he brings pretty much a team that I would have never expected, because the team he brought is very weak to Diggersby. The team he brought is even pretty weak to Physical Thunderous. I could have just brought a very basic balanced build with Diggersby, Thunderous, Momentum, and then my Wall Core and a Hazard Remover, and I would have been fine. So, you know, it is what it is. Yeah, so I'll come back in here soon. Once this little stall fest between the Clefable and Gudra ends, and in fact it ends right there. So right on cue, as he does decide to pull out his Gudra finally and try something else again as he goes into his Kartana. So here I'm forced to go into my Talonflame. I don't know, it's a tricky play here, as I try to get the Flame Body on him. If I got the Flame Body on him, that would have been great there. He reveals the Life Orb, and now I'm just going to be able to roost up pretty much for free to make sure I get one more switch in later on, but the fact that his Life Orb makes this, makes me really heavily pressured by Stealth Rocks, and that's an issue, because I really can't switch Talonflame into this thing anymore for fear of actually dying to whatever he goes for, so that's pretty scary there for sure. As we're kind of, I go back into my Audino here just because I might be able to catch something with the Toxic. It's something that prevents him from going into his Steelix, because I do indeed have the Flamethrower on this thing, so if he wants to go into Steelix, he can catch a Flamethrower, and Audino will enjoy that quite a bit, as Audino is really my best way to deal with Steelix at this point, especially considering that I now know he's probably not very offensively invested at all after the heavy slam damage that he did on one of my other mons earlier in the game. So Audino is looking like my way to deal with Steelix. Issue being, being he can easily Toxic me, and I'm forced to go into Clefable at some point to click Heal Bell. Clefable is heavily pressured by both the Electivire and by the Goodra, so it's a very vicious cycle that I'm dealing with right now that's very tough for this particular build to deal with. So that's a little unfortunate. I was able to get his Kartana back in here, which is pretty bad, as I'm going to go for the Protect to see what he wants to go for. Now here I make a little bit of a misplay. So in the initial play-in of the game, or when the game was actually happening, I initially thought that he was actually Choice Banded. I didn't see the Life Orb recoil, I only saw the Rocky Helmet recoil whenever he attacked my Talonflame. So I thought that he was Choice Banded, so I was going into my Slowbro thinking that might be an opportunity to try to set up there. As I see now that his Life Orb, and now I'm forced to essentially panic, and I sack my T-Flame. Now, issue with that is that Talonflame actually could have won me the game, so that was a little bit of a misplay, but it was going to be really hard for me to Rapid Spin on anything on his team. That was the biggest issue there, as theoretically I guess I could have gone into my Hitmontop there instead of into my Talonflame and maybe preserved my Talonflame for later, but what that would have done is that would have left my Hitmontop very weak as well as my Talonflame very weak, and that would just be not good, essentially. But Talonflame was looking like the probable win con there, considering the team composition that he brought, and that's kind of on me for not really preserving the Talonflame like I should have, but it was heavily pressured by rocks. It was going to come in on like 20% no matter what, and there was still a chance that I could have actually lived that Leaf Blade, I think. And yeah, I guess we didn't get the roll there. If that was a roll, I don't know if he was Adamant or Jolly, whatever, but there was a chance that that was actually a roll to take me out. We do actually go down there and lose probably my win con, my offensive win con, quote unquote. Not even quotes, it was an offensive win con in this game. And now the Steelix is even more of a problem to deal with, as I literally only have one way, and that is with the Audino. But if Audino is toxic and he just switches hard into things like his Necrozma or into other mons that can soft check the Audino, then there's nothing I can really do to take this thing out. As he does actually let me fire off a Flamethrower here and get a bunch of damage on this. He goes for the Heavy Slam. It does jack all to me, so Audino is definitely a stop to the Steelix. And, man, looking back at this in hindsight, it's I don't know how I could have won this game, honestly. Like, I don't want to say it was an unwinnable game at preview, because that's disrespecting my opponent. My opponent played very well. Full props to him for prepping well and playing well in this game, not taking anything away from him at all. I just don't know how I would have won this game. Just looking at the sets that were brought in this, the only thing that could have possibly won the game for me, given the sets that I brought, was the Talonflame. I was a dumb and sacked it to the Kartana there, but I don't think I was going to really have an opening to win with Talonflame anyways, because he could easily just go into something that checked me harder, and I wouldn't be able to get rid of the rocks, because he could always go hard into his Steelix on my Hitmontop, and Toxic me and keep setting up Stealth Rocks, and there's nothing I can do about it. So, like, yeah, I don't know. This was a tough one for sure. But if it wasn't already obvious, we're not going to win this game. And we're able to make it close, because the combination of Audino and Clefable definitely can win the game. That's for sure. Especially considering that I was able to finally land a Toxic on the Goodra, which was one of the two huge problems on my team. And with the Steelix weekend, if I can get the Toxic off of my Audino, like I said, the combination of the Clefable and the Audino can win the game. Issue being, Slowbro is still heavily pressured by the Infernape, and Infernape can obviously do a lot of damage to both Clefable and Audino, meaning that Slowbro, I have to hard switch Slowbro into the Infernape if I want to live. I need to weaken the Infernape down with his own Flare Blitz recoil, as well as Life Orb recoil and Rocks damage, if I want to be able to knock that thing out. But that's my only way to win this game, and it's very tough to do so when he has still this thing relatively healthy, and it is able to take out my Hitmontop here, as I just fire off a little bit of chip damage, I believe, with a Mach Punch there. As I'm going to go into my Clef. Here, he reveals the Z move. So, again, great prep on his part. He got me here with the Z move, able to hit through my Protect, as if I were able to Protect there and he didn't have the Z move, I would have been able to get Clefable out of range of Thunderbolt, could have wished up, could have protected, gotten back up to full health, and as he goes into Steelix, I believe Audino, I'm not sure if Audino is toxic at this point in the game, but if I wasn't toxic, then I think I actually definitely had a strong chance of winning the game with Clefable plus Audino. That said, time was definitely running out at this point in the battle. I believe there was very, very, very little time left, and that would have been probably impossible for me to bring it back at that stage, just due to the amount of time left. And see, the Slowbro is super weakened here, as I do Wish Pass into the Slowbro, knowing it's really my only way to win. I need him to essentially choke here, as I need him to basically switch out. If I had Scald, I would have won here too, or would have had a very good chance to win here too, as after the Trick Room, could have gone for combinations of Scald and Psychic, and considering I still had Heal Belt in the back, there was a chance that I could have actually gotten the Slowbro healthy with my clef, sacked my clef, gone back into Slowbro, calm mind up, and then win. So there were a lot of different ways that just a small tweak in my prep could have actually got me the victory here, but fact of the matter is I didn't quite have the moves that I needed to be able to win this game. As in hindsight, I do kind of regret having Calm Mind on Slowbro. I think if I was just Trick Room, Scald, Psychic, it would have been a little bit better. But then again, it was nice to have that option to maybe 1v1 a non-boosting Necrozma. As that the only way to really 1v1 a Necrozma is if I have some sort of boosting move on my Slowbro. So, give and take, you know. But here I'm going to go into my Audino, knowing that it can basically handle the Necrozma from this range. I go for the Flamethrower on the Infernape, and I'm going to Protect here to scout for what he wants to go for, knowing that the toxic damage is piling up a little bit. As he actually goes for the Flare Blitz. Unfortunately for me, if he were not in Blaze range, I actually could have taken this hit, and I'll go for a Wish here on this turn just in case I don't die to this, but he's in Blaze range, and down goes Audino. Infernape's going to go down to the Poison. He goes into his Steelix as I go into my Clefable, and this is actually where time runs out. So, we would have lost the game 3-0. It turns out being a 3-1 thanks to the timer. Could have been a 3-2 if I was a prick and decided to timer stall there, but, you know, I'm not that guy. So, yeah, this happened. Great game to my opponent, though. He prepped well considering what I actually brought. I really do think that he might have under-prepped a little bit for the more balanced builds, but, you know, what can you do? He brought the right team for the right moment, and that's why he deserves the win here. So, no shame in that, but we're not going to bring Semi-Stall ever again. That was awful. So, we actually do drop Audino after this week as a little bit of a, not really a spoiler, but a little bit of a heads up for next week. So, we do drop Audino, and we are going to replace that with a Sliggoo. Now, it's kind of a weird swap, I know, but the fact of the matter is my team is very weak to fire types. As you saw in my week 2 game against Electric Storm, I was super weak to Ninetales. I was super weak to Heatran, even despite the fact that I had, you know, things to offensively check it. I really couldn't switch into it other than Slowbro, and the combination of Fire plus Grass was very, very tough for me to deal with, as well as the combination of Fire plus Electric. And in order to help combat that a little bit, I needed a Dragon. I didn't have too many points available from Mons that I was willing to actually drop at the time. And as a result, I do drop the Audino, which was 4 points, for Sliggoo, which is 2 points. And don't sleep on Sliggoo, because that thing is really fat. it's really, really fat. And I think it actually can chew hits about as well as Audino can, if not a little bit better, obviously with worse recovery, as it only is going to recover with Rest instead of having Wish Protect. But still overall a good mon, I think, and I think it's really good for my team just defensively, as it's not even that passive, honestly. I believe it has like base 85, base 90 special attack, which is usable. If I were to run more of like a bulky set with some offensive investment, I can do damage to opposing Pokemon. It does get Draco Meteor, so I can take a hit really from most dragons if I'm invested in the proper defensive stat, and dish out a Draco and kill, so that's definitely something. It doesn't get fire coverage in the form of Flamethrower or Fire Blast, but it does get Hidden Power Fire, which is good against a lot of steals. It also gets a lot of the same coverage options as Goodra, I believe, including both Ice Beam and Thunderbolt, so it gets a lot of things that I can work with, as well as some cool defensive support type moves, like Acid Armor, I believe, and even like weather changing moves and stuff like that. So it's got some cool stuff. I'm not going to reveal all of the tricks that I've thought about at this point for my precious Sliggoo, but just know that I have made the swap, and that will go into effect here for week 4, which is my game against Polymac and the West Coast Wingles, a game I have been excited for quite a while, as this is one of the players that I really was looking forward to battling against whenever I entered the PPL, as I've seen him in action several times, and I know that he is a solid player, and I think it'll be a really good game for sure. He also has a pretty threatening team with things like Thunderous T and Mega Scizor most notably, and a Garchomp that looks pretty threatening too, so he's got some pretty good mons. Should be a good game, but that's about all I have to say, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I apologize again for the semi-stall of this team. Won't happen again. It didn't work. I didn't like it. There's just no reason for me to do it, especially when it's going to bring the game to timer on Wi-Fi. Like, I didn't have fun at all playing that game, honestly. Even if I was winning, I don't think I would have had much fun playing that game, because I just wanted to pull my hair out while I was clicking Wish Protect over and over and over again, and the occasional Toxic, so yeah, not doing that again. But thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you all next week against the West Coast Wingles. Peace.